Watch our summary and find out if this movie is worth watching. And if you like the summary, you can watch the full movie on the following platforms. The movie begins by introducing a small family: the father, Roy, the mother, Fabiola, and their young daughter, Teresa. We discover that Teresa is suffering from recurring nightmares about a big dog chasing her. It turns out these nightmares are caused by the large and aggressive dog of their neighbors, which scares Teresa whenever she passes by. Roy talks to his neighbor Chava, the dog's owner, while they play basketball together. They discuss their personal lives and discover that they both want to improve their relationships with their wives. Chava suggests they have dinner together to improve their relations. Chava and his wife agree to visit Roy and Fabiola for dinner, but Roy and Fabiola are worried about leaving Teresa alone because of her fear of the dog. They ask the neighbors to lock up the dog during dinner so they can bring Teresa along. Anahi, Chava's wife, hesitates but finally agrees reluctantly. That evening, Roy and Fabiola visit the neighbor's house for dinner, discussing their jobs and personal lives. Anahi shares how she met Chava during an attempt to free pigs from a farm, while Roy shares his story of meeting Fabiola through a dating app. Suddenly, they hear the dog barking loudly and discover that the neighbors didn't lock the dog up as promised. Fabiola becomes angry because the neighbors lied to her. Anahi brings the dog closer to Teresa to familiarize her with it, but the dog barks even louder and scares Teresa. Fabiola takes her daughter and angrily returns home, complaining to Roy about the neighbors' behavior and their treatment of the dog as if it were their child. She tells her husband that they have nothing in common with their neighbors. The next day, Teresa searches for her toy at home and discovers that the dog has it and is tearing it apart. Teresa approaches to retrieve her toy and uses a stone to scare the dog away, but the dog attacks her and bites her hand. Fabiola arrives in time and uses a spray to fend off the dog. She quickly takes Teresa to the hospital. When they arrive, the doctor tells them that Teresa's injury is serious and she might lose the use of her hand if not treated quickly. Anahi learns about the incident and visits the hospital with her husband Chava, bringing a dog-shaped toy as a gift for Teresa. When Fabiola asks them to apologize, they refuse. Fabiola rejects the gift. That evening, Roy calls the police, but they refuse to intervene, saying the incident is not within their jurisdiction. Fabiola, however, does not give up and insists on taking action against their neighbors to keep the dog away from their home. She asks her husband to contact Marcus, his lawyer friend who has connections with the authorities. The next morning, Roy visits his lawyer friend Marcus, who agrees to help. A few days later, the police arrive and take the dog away by force, angering Chava and causing Anahi to scream and cry, pleading with the police to take Teresa instead of the dog. The police ignore her pleas. Chava tries to console Anahi, and it is revealed that Marcus took the dog to an illegal place where dogs are treated poorly. Roy feels guilty about their actions against the dog, but Fabiola reassures him they exhausted every legal option first. Suddenly, the power goes out in the house, and everyone wakes up terrified. Teresa tells her mother that she saw the dog watching her from the window. Fabiola reassures her, saying it was just a dream, and tries to calm her down to sleep again. The next day, Roy and Fabiola discover that someone had cut the power deliberately and see Anahi watching them from afar. Roy and Fabiola decide to talk to Chava, who apologizes for his wife's behavior and announces that they will move to a new place and start fresh. After the neighbors leave, Roy and Fabiola feel relieved and return to their normal lives. But Teresa wakes up terrified again, claiming she saw the dog watching them. Roy goes outside to investigate, leaving Fabiola and Teresa inside the house. He senses someone is watching them outside. Fabiola discovers that the alarm system is not working and tries to contact Marcus, who is investigating the neighbors. Marcus finds out that Chava and Anahi are using fake names and that such incidents are not the first of their kind. In the backyard, Roy finds a cigarette and realizes that the neighbors haven't actually left. Fabiola and Roy plan to put an end to the chaos. Fabiola notices an open window and suspects someone is inside the house, so she quickly closes it. Meanwhile, Chava, wearing a dog mask, sneaks into the house and attacks Roy, injuring him. At the same time, Anahi, also wearing a dog mask, tries to break into Teresa's room, but Fabiola bravely defends her, injuring Anahi and quickly closing the door. Roy arrives just in time, managing to reach his wife and daughter despite his injury. They decide to flee the house and seek help. As they leave the room, they find Chava and Anahi waiting for them. Chava and Anahi reveal their plan to take revenge on Teresa for their dog's suffering. Roy tells Fabiola to take Teresa and run while he confronts them. They escape to their neighbor George's house, but he isn't home. Teresa crawls into the house through a pet door and finds George tied up and unable to move, revealing that Chava did this to him. Meanwhile, Chava attacks Fabiola and hits her on the head, dragging her back into their house. Chava then goes out to search for Teresa in the forest, but George protects her, knocking Chava to the ground. The chase continues until Anahi kills George by slashing his throat. Chava returns home to tell Roy and Fabiola about his plans for their daughter, saying he will make her suffer like their dog did. He brings out torture tools. When Chava approaches Roy, Roy burns Chava's face with a chemical that Chava intended to use for torture, disfiguring him. Chava, enraged, kills Roy with an electric shock. Fabiola collapses in grief as she watches her husband die in front of her eyes. Anahi tries to tend to Chava's injuries while Teresa frees Fabiola. Fabiola and Teresa escape the house, but Anahi chases after them. Fabiola hits Anahi on the head, seriously injuring her. Finally, Fabiola decides to confront Chava and kills him with a blow to the head. Fabiola and her daughter get into the car and drive away, but Fabiola returns to the house to make sure Chava is dead and to exact her revenge. She goes back to the house with a golf club. When she finds Chava, she strikes him on the head until he dies. Relieved that he is dead, Fabiola is shocked to find that Anahi is not in the house. Realizing her daughter is in danger, she rushes back to the car to find that Anahi has kidnapped Teresa. Fabiola heads to the police station to report the incident, but the police fail to find Anahi. Days and weeks go by with no trace of Teresa or Anahi. In an unknown location, Anahi has completely changed her appearance and lives alone in a luxurious house. She goes shopping and returns home to prepare food for her new dog. We see Teresa locked in the basement, tied by her neck like a dog. It becomes clear that Anahi has decided to torture Teresa as a replacement for her dog.